Hey guys, Crypto Sunday, and it's a rather green week, as I'm sure you can guess, with the Trump victory. And we did just get a little extra pump on last night. It sort of looks like a little bit of a mini short squeeze. Some shorts got liquidated. Don't know whether this will sort of hold up into tomorrow and the start of the sort of working week. Sort of last sort of few months, it's certainly been very, very quiet, sort of pretty much every weekend, and then trading resumes sort of when the stock market is open, and presumably sort of ETFs do have sort of more of an impact. But yeah, we've got a weekend pump. Maybe weekend moves are back. But yes, it's portfolio's 74,000 up. So that's just about 20%. Actually, sorry, 76,000, including last night's push. So yeah, very nice. Let's have a look at some news. So checking in on the CoinShares report. This is from before the election, so this week's will look rather nicer, I would imagine. But we saw 2.2 billion of inflows, so looking pretty good. Pretty much all into BlackRock, as we saw last week. We did see 9.5 million into Ethereum. They obviously had a little bit of outflows before that. 3.1 million out of the multi-asset, but 5.7 into Solana, so that's pretty good. A little bit out of Litecoin, people shorting Bitcoin, of course. That is, I guess, partly what has caused this liquidation and upside. 10% increase in the amount of people shorting Bitcoin. Obviously expecting a Kamala win, that didn't turn out quite so well. And just looking at by country, still got Brazil selling off a little bit. I would imagine the ones that have held on will be very happy. 24 million out of Canada, 20 million out of Sweden, 13 out of Switzerland, a little bit into Germany and Australia. But yeah, reasonable amount of outflows, and then obviously 2.2 billion into the US. So whether these are people selling out of these countries to move to the US, don't know, or if it's just opposing views. Who knows? But looking at the more recent news since the election result, we have seen some life coming into Ethereum. Sort of 3 positive days in a row, 50 million, 80, 85 million, partly going into BlackRock and part into Fidelity for the most part. A little bit into VanEck as well. But yeah, not not even 3-digit flows, but at least it's something. And on the Bitcoin side, obviously we've seen a rather monster week. So Monday and Tuesday, sort of leading up to the election, was kind of a follow-on from later in the previous week. Sort of 540 million outflows, people not wanting to hold it into the election. So yeah, that didn't pan out too well for those that have sold. 116 million outflow on election day. And then, yeah, as the results started to come in, strangely enough, we got outflow from BlackRock on results day when it was, clear that Trump had won. So that was unusual, sort of inflow into everyone else. And it was a 630 million inflow day, even inflow into, the big 1.5% grayscale fund. So some crazy people still out there. And then, yeah, BlackRock back with a vengeance on the Thursday, 1.1 billion inflow, their largest flow since they started. So very positive, 1.37 billion in overall. And then a sort of somewhat quieter day on Friday, 293 million. But if we start to get back to, this sort of 2, 3, 400 million inflow every day as a sort of base, then it just provides a nice bit of support and sort of bid for the market. So we'll have to see how they go. And obviously you had Trump's pledge at the Bitcoin Nashville conference that he would fire Gary Gensler on day one. It's sort of looking, most commentators are now saying that he'll probably leave beforehand, rather than sort of pointlessly get sacked. I don't think they're intending to work together. So Trump comes in on, is it January the 20th? Gary might as well just sort of step away and move back into private sector. People sort of joking that he was in connection maybe with a job with Binance at one point, jobs with Ripple Labs, which would be, I don't know, probably not on the cards anymore, but I'm sure he'll go into like banking or something in the private sector if he does leave. Former head of SEC's Office of Internet Enforcement, John Reed Stark, has said that he basically expects him to stand down before Trump comes in, and sort of saying that the SEC under someone else will be lightening up tremendously. The SEC is not going to be bringing any fraud cases against the cryptoverse participants at all in the coming years, which may be a bit of a bold claim. Saying most of the existing cases will grind to a screeching halt, except the ones that involve egregious fraud. So not even a mild fraud is worthy of a lawsuit. I still think, there probably will be a reasonable amount of cases because, in a bull market you get more and more scams, and they should be, stamped out, rightly so. And there's obviously talk about the next SEC chair, and they do love these quality pictures of Gary Gensler. Maybe a bit sour grapes, but there you go. So we've got Hester Peirce, one of the sort of current Republican side. They're saying would be the likely choice. That doesn't seem to be the case. She's known in the industry as Crypto Mum. But she has sort of kind of said that she's not particularly interested. She sort of basically said the chairman position is sort of very political, or the thinking is that this is what she means. She hasn't said it in so many words, but that the chairman position is sort of very political, and she would rather have someone else in that position and stay in her position as commissioner, doing the work with a sort of pro crypto environment. She can actually push the regulation through. And you have Mark Ueda, the other sort of Republican side commissioner, and he's sort of been very critical of the SEC, of sort of Gary Gensler's style. Said their current approach was a disaster for the whole industry. So whether he wants to sort of take that job and sort of push through his approach, we don't know. Robinhood's chief legal officer Dan Gallagher is also in consideration, and one or two other people, but I think basically whoever it is going to be sort of more popular on the SEC side. Part of this more positive approach, of course, is everyone start talking about ETFs again. So you've had one or two people file already for Solana ETFs in the last sort of few months. You've had one or two put in for an XRP Ripple ETF, and the thinking is if they're going to sort of back off regulation by enforcement, then maybe some of these ETFs go through as well. Obviously, you've got Ethereum and Bitcoin ETFs. Sort of thinking is if you're allowed an Ethereum ETF, then why not Solana? The only sort of holdback it seemed to be before was that there are futures on the CME for Ethereum and not for Solana, but whether they would sort of agree using another metric, sort of Coinbase's data or sort of someone else's data, or maybe just get Solana futures on the CME sort of fairly quickly. We don't really know, but you already had Ethereum futures ETFs as well, so it wasn't really a huge decision to add Ethereum spot ETFs. And they're also talking about Ethereum ETF options. SEC sort of just before the election looks like delayed the approval of Ethereum ETF options. They have approved Bitcoin, but it's still sort of going through approval by the CFTC and people are still saying Q1. Whether that might be sort of pushed through any quicker, we don't know, but all good. And this was before the election results came in, actually, but I would imagine we'll be sort of pushing forward at a much quicker pace. Tokenized fund settlements. Everyone sort of seems to be thinking we're going to tokenize everything in the world, basically, sort of ETFs and futures and all sorts, and it'll be sort of much easier to trade, potentially on chain. I think that's probably many years away, but we could start to see a start at least. And you've got Swift, UBS, and Chainlink piloting a tokenized fund settlement. It's looking like in Singapore. You're not going to get this thing. Maybe you'll start to get this sort of thing back in the US, but we'll have to see. But Swift is obviously the big name, and yeah, sort of potentially feeling a little threatened. Their system is sort of widely used by the whole world, but is a little bit slow. So we'll have to see if if they push on with this sort of thing, maybe come back to the US, and whether Chainlink can push on. It is sort of doing pretty well this week. Still seeing the incredible rise of Tether as well. Obviously, they're still making a fairly hefty profit on their US treasuries. US dropped the base rate down to 4.75%, but that is still an incredible amount of money if you're paying Tether holders 0. So, yeah, they are pushing into other things as well. Oil trading, a $45 million transaction of 670,000 barrels of oil. So they're getting into commodities, financed on Tether using USDC, and yeah, a Middle Eastern deal. So the trade finance industry has a market value of $10 trillion, and it's relied on slower, more costly payment structures, and they can sort of reduce these fees. So yeah, interesting to see. They're still posting incredible profits. Posted a profit of 2.5 billion for the third quarter of 2024. So guessing they will be pushing even more into Bitcoin. They've been buying gold. I think it's all they have 48 tons of gold, as we mentioned before. So I presume that'll be going up. Brings their total earnings for the year to $7.7 billion, which I think makes them the most profitable company by person in the world, or a sort of significant company it is. So yeah, incredible. They also reported to hold an additional 7,100 Bitcoin as well. So a hell of a total. And they've also been diversifying into sort of VC investments, I guess, startups, including renewable energy, Bitcoin mining, AI, telecommunications, and education. That's a very sort of diverse range, but they're becoming a VC investor. Finally, a nice bit of news for the UK, sort of regarding crypto. We've been sort of saying that we're a crypto hub for quite a long while. Various sort of business secretaries and people saying they want to push the UK forward, and all we actually have been doing in reality is pushing back, and the sort of banks cracking down on people and saying that we're not allowed things, unless you're a institutional professional investor, which is a little bit crazy. But we have a UK pension fund allocating to Bitcoin, which is a positive move at least. Cartwright allocating 3% of their total assets, which is sort of a fairly high percentage. I thought most of these companies are going for sort of 1, maybe 2%. I think there was sort of big news about the state of Michigan pension fund that allocated a portion of money towards the ETFs, but I think theirs was sort of more like 0.1%. It was a large dollar value, but they're a much bigger fund. And yeah, like 0.1% to Bitcoin, where, this is 3%, valued at £50 million. And yeah, they're a pension specialist for defined benefit and hybrid schemes. So have to see how they do. And interesting to note that they bought spot. They didn't, I suppose, being in the UK, whether they had any restriction on buying the US ETFs. I'm guessing they wouldn't have, because they would be an institutional investor. But yeah, having sort of £50 million, they decided to buy spot and keep it themselves. So guessing the security is reasonably good. Said the asymmetric return profile enables a small allocation to have big positive financial impact, protected by extensive risk management at both scheme and asset levels. So, that is the sort of point everyone's making with Bitcoin. It could potentially, 10x over the next sort of 10 years. They're talking about, time horizon set for 10 years. They think 3% allocation is appropriate, and, that could become what is 30% of the current portfolio in 10 years, say. I don't think that's out of the question. And yeah, if you were to lose it, then it's 3%. It would hurt, but that's not too bad. And maybe their risk management may see them sort of not lose the whole 3%. So yeah, pretty strong. They say trustees are increasingly looking for innovative solutions to future-proof their scheme in the face of economic challenges. I'm not sure we've really seen Bitcoin in the face of economic challenges too much just yet. But yeah, an asset class with a unique asymmetric return profile. They said other investment consulting firms in the UK are against or do not support advising clients on Bitcoin. And they said if you're constructing the best possible portfolio, that cannot happen if all asset classes are not being considered, basically. Just thinking about the miners as well, sort of been mentioning over the last few months, we've had more people get into mining, energy companies and countries and that sort of thing. So yeah, since the halving, we saw a bit of a drop down to the sort of 580s, and yeah, it's now sort of back up to, back through the highs and up to 715. It's been at 750 earlier in the month. So yeah, difficulty is going up. If we look at difficulty on the 1 day average, yeah, it's gone through 95 and through 101. So that's not ideal. I was sort of relatively happy with it bobbling up around here, in the sort of 92, 88, considering that it was pretty much there back in May, and price looking a lot more positive. But yeah, that was sort of short-lived, and we're now through 100. So the miners will be getting less profitable, albeit Bitcoin price going up. But yeah, I'm sort of very much still of the position that expect the Bitcoin miners will do incredibly well on a rising Bitcoin price, but I would be looking to get out and, as I say, probably not come back. And everyone's getting very optimistic about Ethereum now, of course. Bitcoin dominance, people are noticing, does seem to have topped out on sort of pretty much the election results day. And yeah, everyone's sort of getting bullish on altcoins, and certainly the layer 2s are posting sort of decent numbers. Transactions up. This would all mean fees on the up, and potentially that sort of rolling back into Ethereum, and sort of them potentially going deflationary. Doesn't seem to be the case just yet, and you have had an awful lot of transactions on these L2s not really materializing into anything for Ethereum. You sort of get 100,000 or $100 million worth of transactions, and sort of like 2 million being posted back to ETH, or even a fraction of that. So yeah, Ethereum processed 4 trillion in settlement value over the last year, and another 5 trillion in stablecoin transfers annually. But yeah, it's not really panned out into fees sort of recently. And you have some incredibly high numbers from Vanek. This is Matthew Siegel sort of having some somewhat crazy targets, 2030 price target. He's seeing his base case as $22,000 Ethereum. So in 6 years, I guess that isn't sort of a massive number. It's like 8x. You know, if we're talking about Bitcoin potentially 10xing by 20. Well, I said 10 years before, but yeah, even that seems a high number. Bear case, obviously, if it doesn't particularly work out and it has like 15% market share, then basically everything looks awful, and it's to $360 by 2030. And yeah, if everyone wants to be on ETH, 90% market share and $154,000 ETH in 6 years. So I do think there's not a lot of point in making these sort of incredibly rash predictions, so far into the future. We don't really know where the industry is going to be. Smart contracts could be completely dominated by a chain, an L1 that doesn't even exist yet, but just sort of rapidly gains popularity. We saw how quick Solana did gain. But yeah, people like to make these predictions, and that'll happen even more now that we get into sort of more bull market territory. Just looking at sort of current Ethereum burning, it's not really happening. You're sort of still seeing this longer term increase on on current supply. It's sort of getting towards the level of the merge. We were at sort of 120,521,000, now at 420,000. It was on a sort of steady, slightly up, slightly down, but more down trajectory until basically the market top in March. And sort of last 30 days, you've had an ever so slight slow down in in fees, but it's certainly not going deflationary. And sort of even since the election, it's sort of slightly picked up again back to normal. So I'm not getting super bullish just yet about Ethereum. I think it sounds like they almost need massive scale from the L2s to then be actually posting enough fees back to the main chain to go deflationary. So yeah, I mean, even Bitcoin is more inflationary than this, but yeah, it's not great. The whole sort of thesis behind Ethereum was that it would be deflationary. So seems like we have to see a hell of a lot more for that to happen again. So looking at coins for the week, obviously it's a green wall because everything is very happy. Bitcoin is up 16%, very nice. Solana obviously outperforming on 26% up. Ethereum 30%. Everyone is very bullish about Ethereum. Chainlink 33%. That is not quite outperformer for the week. XRP lagging a little bit, about the same as Bitcoin, 16.7%. I guess people are sort of positive on the lawsuits, I guess, being thrown out, but haven't seen all that much genuine adoption. Power Ledger 17%. Gala is actually the outperformer for the week, 37%. Got to admit, these smaller altcoins that I've had on the sell pile are starting to look a little bit more of an attractive sell. They're still in the red overall, so I would have a fair bit of tax loss selling available and could potentially put those into something else. Audius 16% up. Internet Computer 24%. Quant 17%. Polygon 24%. Basic Attention Token 20%. And VeChain 28%. So the smaller altcoins sort of largely outperforming. And yeah, I've sort of been certainly keeping an eye on gold and sort of gold miners, potentially waiting for a sort of good time to cash in on some of these smaller altcoins that I'm not all that convinced. They're having a good week this week, but yeah, not all that convinced that they're going to be outperformers for the whole bull market, where I do like the gold and silver, and I think the portfolio basically with my bigger holdings will still be fine. And there is still tax loss selling available. So with the higher capital gains tax rates now, could basically gain an instant sort of 24% gain on these and reinvest them into something else. So we'll have to see. Be interested in your thoughts on that, whether you think it's worth holding on to some of these smaller coins. As I say, they're already up, a lot of them 20-30% in a week. So yeah, maybe thinking a little bit too much about tax and not about what they can do. But let me know your thoughts. What are you guys buying? Are you just popping the champagne? And like and subscribe. See you soon.